This world is not what you think it is. This world is not what you think it is.
The control system, the global control system, wants us to focus on a dot. This is what it does in science with its specializations. You focus on one dot. And if you focus on a dot without peripheral vision, then you don't see how the dots connect. So you're completely in the dark of the bigger picture. You only see one dot within it.
Mama didn't tell me that the world is unreal. Imaginary story, lies and unreal. Through the lies and the truth and fairy tale lies don't have a prince of Wales. I never get told what is real and true. That's why I put truth out of the blue. Never really did. No one really cares that our heart it hurts. This world is nothing in that world to really exist. We nearly burns reality and twist. With the vision and to fear my hold up that the world is a sport. So many things, the earth is the earth. When we want the lies get told in this world. No one really sees, no one really cares when our heart get hurt. The world is a lie. Nothing is real. This world is a lie. There is nothing I can feel. This world is a lie. There's nothing is real. This world is a lie. There is nothing I can feel. This world is a lie. Nothing is real. This world is a lie. There is nothing I can feel. This world is a lie. Nothing is real. This world is a lie. Nothing I can feel. This world is a lie. Nothing is real. This world is a lie. Nothing I can feel. Present the bar, come on. This world is a lie. Nothing is real. This world is a lie. There is nothing I can feel. Merci beaucoup. Merci.
The control system, the global control system, wants us to focus on a dot. This is what it does in science with its specializations. You focus on one dot. And if you focus on a dot without peripheral vision, then you don't see how the dots connect. So you're completely in the dark of the bigger picture. You only see one dot within it.
Yes.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of Connecting the Dots. I'm your host, Richard Lopez, and my co-host, Tam. What's going on, Tam?
Hey, we got the first one under our belt. And
Absolutely.
we are just scratching the surface. I think we've just begun. There's so much to cover. There's so much you've introduced me to, and I can't wait to just dive in and keep going.
Absolutely. And this episode is going to be Antarctica, ice or crystal, melting buildings. And we got a lot to cover today.
Yeah.
And, so what's going on with you? How's everything been with you?
Everything's going great. It's going great. I'm admiring your hat, your shirt.
Yes, you like the Keresmic hat?
Where
really
did
nice.
you get those, Richard?
Absolutely. And the Keresmic shirt, you know what I mean? With the Keresmic branding. Absolutely. And on the back of it, it has the Keresmic logo on the back too. And it's so comfortable, so nice. Is it flat? And then it's like,
the brand.
Oh, that's a nice shirt too. Where you get your shirt from?
Why? Thank you. Oh, it's the same. I've got the buttons inside the back.
You shopping at the same place, huh?
Could be the Keresmic Truth Store.com.
Let's see what's going on.
Would you like a quick tour?
Absolutely.
Oh, here's our homepage.
Sick. So go ahead and make it.
When you open your eyes to the wonder and unique features of Meltology, you'll start to realize how completely different it is from mainstream geology. The explanation that massive structures were carved into solid rock just reveals more of the lies about our history that's a total crock. Here is some more hidden history that can be seen in plain sight. Once you acknowledge their existence, it's hard to ignore them outright. A heat event to melt red brick buildings is another rabbit hole to explore, making the idea of meltology not quite as conspiratorial anymore. There's obviously no way that the dwellings were carved into any mountainside. Pockets of survival are being presented so often now, helping you to decide. Just some more examples that are historical and archival, giving us the benefit of half melts and preserved pockets of survival. While they are picturesque, it is devastating trying to comprehend the type of energy and amount of heat that could cause these colossal structures to expand, melt, and bend. Okay.
Nice.
I'll come back to you. Okay, now I need to share again for the other one.
Yeah.
Okay.
You need to go to shop again.
But there is nothing bigger in the flat earth community right now.
Yeah. So yes, that's we're all waiting for that, anticipation of that.
Yes.
Good quality work, and he is one of the best in the truth community when it comes to video production. Again, shout out to Sean Hibbler.
Sean Hibbler, yes. We cannot wait. Yeah, talk about anticipation in the flat earth community. That's going to be huge.
Absolutely.
All right. So that's for the Flat Earth News and Reports. That what we'll cover is things like what's up and coming information, updates for the truther community. And then for the store, I should have mentioned this. Anyone who uses the discount code Meltdown15, you get 15% off any entire order.
Get 15% off. So, and what's the code?
Meltdown 15, 15% off.
Meltdown 15. So if you go to the store and use Meltdown 15, you get 15% off of your purchase. So if you want to support this channel, you want to support us, go to KeresmicTruthStore.com. Get your specialty.
Hats, mugs,
whatever. Got a lot of mugs. Check the store out. Get something. Show your support. And represent.
That's gonna with the Instagram page, that's new. Sean Hibbler's movie coming out. On the Instagram page, we have the meetups that Mark Sargent has put together, and then we'll just keep adding. And if anybody has something that they'd like to include, just email us at keresmictruth@gmail.com, and then we can include that also.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. So what's going on Flat Earth News and Reports, Tam?
Welcome to the first Flat Earth News and Reports. This is our mid-March edition, where we're going to start highlighting information from and about the Flat Earth community. Things like upcoming conferences and debates or meetups, like you can see that Mark Sargent has put together. We're also going to focus on upcoming major events like Sean Hibbler's Old World Order film coming out this spring, and we have for you a little preview. Enjoy.
History is written by the victors. So what if the victor story is fabricated? What if the story they gave us all about our recent past was nothing short of a complete lie? For far too long, humanity has relied on the Board of Education to receive its official history narrative. The problem is their narrative makes absolutely no sense. There are giant mistakes in the timeline that show us all. Not only did they lie, but they hid the previous civilization from us, with no mention of our ancestors looking a little different, traveling with no issues, doing it all in style and efficiency, with beautiful architecture that we can't rebuild today, powered up cities, riding around on their advanced technology. Wait, I thought the 1800s into the early 1900s were a bunch of idiots riding around on horse and buggy. Because when you look back and do a little research, it's obvious. This old world was discovered and then destroyed, resurfaced, and populated. They torched every city across the plain. Nothing new under the sun. Rockefeller flooded your brain with lies. Use your head. Think about your family tree and how it all began.
Old World Order. Visit OWOfilm.com for more information.
Yeah, that is going to be epic. We cannot wait for that to come out. Well, thank you so much for joining us on our first Flat Earth News and Reports. If there's anything that you'd like to contribute, any upcoming meetings or conferences, any debates, anything that you'd like to share, let us know at keresmictruth@gmail.com. Yeah, I got into all this, was watching your videos and learning from all that. So thank you. When I see that,
That's awesome. And thank you for what you do.
quality. It's going to be a good show.
Yeah, exactly. We got Mike, my friend Mike, Mike Wilkerson, aka Stellium7, is going to be joining us later. And we're going to talk about this, melted reality and what are his thoughts and what are his opinions on this melted past and what he thinks may be it. We'll be seeing him in the future too as well, Tim. I'm really excited about that conversation.
Yeah, he's incredible. Yeah, we've seen, he was just at Mount Meru, the summit with Jeranism, and that was incredible. He did an overview that was fantastic. He also, just a video I seen recently was with Michelle Gibson and Chad Williams, and did a lot of stuff with underground tunnels, the domes, but it's funny how people have their own, with their focus, but how all of them are starting to overlap. And people are sharing the information.
Pieces of the puzzle, basically.
Exactly, and how they're all coming together, right? And it seems like most people start with flat Earth, and then from there, it just goes, the rabbit hole's deep.
Yep, flat Earth is the introductory.
Right.
Because, if they're lying about this, what else are they lying about?
Everything else.
We're going to find out real fast that these psychopaths are lying about everything. I mean, everything.
That's
so.
Yeah, well, it's fun. It's fun to be on screen with you again. Kind of when it comes to interviews, my whole journey kind of began with you. Actually, the first interview I ever gave was with Philip Druginen.
Yeah,
and then the very next interview I did was with the two of you together.
Yep.
And then we did, I think, 2 or 3 together after that. So that was fun because both of you kind of recognized early on that there might be something to my wacky research. So that was fun. So
Absolutely.
it's been I don't know how many years now, 4 years or something we've had many conversations through the telephone, but
yes. And you wasn't lying. I remember I talked to you for 45 minutes, and my phone bill was like $175.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I'm calling you.
You're not the first person to make that mistake, actually. Mike from Hangman 1128, the guy who's done some of the best research on the trees, he and I had a conversation once. It cost him like $70. So he was gun shy after that. He didn't even want to answer the phone.
Wow, yeah, it's expensive. It's ridiculous. So
it's worth it. That valuable information, though, huh?
Absolutely. I'm glad that you're doing good. So last time you talked to Alex, what's going on with him?
I had lunch with him today.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I told you. They're good friends. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the first time we've seen each other since I got back, because I got back and I had a very busy work week, and so we got together and I gave him a little recap of my experiences in Mexico, and I went on to California and saw a family there and spent some really wonderful time with my mom. First time in 5 or 6 years since I've been in the States. And then from there I went down to San Diego and met with a bunch of friends, actually. There were about 7 of us at dinner, some old college buddy and an old friend that I used to live with in Seattle, and then another friend who was down at Antarctica that I spent a lot of time with down there.
Okay.
So
Did you have any sun in California? Did you get any sunshine?
Yeah, I had some really beautiful days, and then the first couple of days I got there, it poured buckets, and they've had more water there than they've had in many years. So everything was lush and green, and the lake in my hometown was almost full. And last time I was there, it was at like 25%. So it was cool to see my hometown in a different light.
Wow, that's awesome. I bet Alex would love to go to Mexico, man. I think he would have a good time.
Alex doesn't want to go anywhere. He hates travel. He's like, the thought of getting on a plane is like, no. You're gonna have to have a major truther conference here in Spain, and then he'll show up.
And then he'll show up. Shout out to a conspiracy music guru. Alex, he's a good guy, great guy.
He's got a new video out too. Yeah, he's just
the one and only.
Yeah.
Yes, one and only. He is the man, flat earth man. He is the man. Definitely shout out to him. Definitely, man. So look, the reason why we got you on the edge of the seat is because, like I said, I know we talked about this, years ago about this topic, about this meltology and these melted buildings phenomenon, this new thing that has been coming up. And I know how your feelings are about it. Also, too, is that people that don't know is that we did videos before in the past explaining your research about these titans. And before people know how I feel, and I'm honest, that we looking, these mountains are one of 3 things that from doing my research, they're either gigantic humanoids or gigantic animals that previous civilizations and timelines existed here on this realm, or it's melted buildings of some sort from this X factor. And the reason why we call it X factor is because we don't know exactly how these buildings melted, and then all of this is just our hypothesis, and a hypothesis is an educated guess on what's going on. But Mike, you took us last time when we did a video together inside of this cave, this Titan elephant, and showed empirical evidence that where the eardrum was and different these cave systems, and that it basically what we were looking at is a petrified elephant. You want to elaborate on that real quick before we go into it?
Yeah, well, it wasn't an eardrum. It was inside the sinuses. But just one more thing to the list that you didn't mention was the giant trees as well, right?
Yes, excuse me. Yes,
as far as the mountains go.
absolutely.
Yeah, so I don't know, what has it been now? About 6 years since I started looking at mountains differently. And when you get onto the whole flat Earth topic, alternative cosmologies, it opens your eyes to the possibility that maybe there are other things that we didn't know about that are not what we were told. And there's a mountain here in the town that I live in Spain called Montgo that looks a hell of a lot like an elephant, and I always thought it was cool, it was cute, it's there's the elephant, but it never occurred to me that it might be a former being, which there's a lot of reasons why that couldn't be true in the mainstream model. And so I started to look into it initially with Google Earth, and was shocked after about an hour of looking at it, tilting in 3D and kind of scrolling around the mountain. And I'd already lived here for about 7 years at that point, so I was well familiar with the mountain and have hiked it many times. And when I started to look into it, I started to find all sorts of anatomical correlations on the macro level. That the head was shaped like a head, and there were like two cutouts in the mountain right where the head would meet the shoulders, and between where the legs would be, there was a deep crevice of a canyon that I'd hiked up multiple times. And there was a discoloration on the mountain that was like a quarter moon shaped discoloration exactly where an ear should be. And so after about an hour or two of examining it, I was like, this is ridiculous. There's so many things that are lining up. And before I ever got on the subject, I was already aware of the topic of pareidolia, which is this idea that we're seeing things and we're just kind of projecting our imaginings onto those things. And so I took a step back and I was like, well, let's look at this from a methodical approach. And so I got out my anatomy books and I started looking at things, because there's a cave that is right where an eye socket should be if that were really a head, and it's exactly there, and it's shaped like an eye. And and I'd been in the cave many times and had always wondered about how did this form, because it didn't make any sense. That the mainstream model is that the mountains are formed through tectonic activity and they're colliding and going upward. Right?
Yes.
And then that's breaking off in different ways and eroding, and that's why we have all these different shapes of mountains. And so there were a variety of reasons that made no sense, and the cave was one of them. And there were so many features in the cave that didn't make sense at all with that explanation. And so I decided I was going to go back up and do more investigation. And I'd been up at the eye probably 6 or 7 times at that point, just for hiking, just for pleasure. And so I got out my anatomy books and I got online and I was looking at different 3D anatomy renderings where I could, change things from different directions. And as a chiropractor, which is my profession, I was already aware that the eye sockets of most vertebrates are comprised of 7 different bones. And those bones meet to create different fissures where like the optic nerve goes and blood vessels, and also these meeting points of the bones are what are called sutures. And so those are in specific places in vertebrates. And so I had this list of things that I would expect to find if there was any truth to the crazy idea. And I went up there, and on that first examination, I found 10 different, very, very specific anatomical correlations. And when you start to look at odds and think of things from a mathematical perspective, like what, you roll dice and you roll double sixes. What are your odds of rolling them 5 or 6 times in a row? very, very low, right? So I knew if I found something that looks like an elephant, head is right, the neck is right. There's if you look at it from above, you can see what looks like a spinal ridge, and coming off from that ridge on both sides are these lines going down that look like a rib cage. Already I was at 10 anatomical features just with the overview that I was doing. And then once I was up in the eye, there was another 10 added to that list. So
yeah,
when you're talking about something having 20 specific anatomical features, it starts to be less of a crazy idea and more of a possibility.
Right, some more real scientific evidence, right, of what's going on rather than
So
Hello, and welcome to Unveiling a Titan, the first of what will be several videos in a series in which I hope to provide conclusive proof that Titans actually existed, or at the very least, a lot of compelling evidence that will spark curiosity. This is a famous mountain on the east coast of Spain, in the Costa Blanca, that's called Montgo. It's also known as the elephant. So you can see the shape of the head here, the upper back, and then tapering off. And in fact, there's a plateau here that's higher than the town in this area that looks a lot like a trunk that's been extended when you see it from the right angle. I've been hiking this mountain for about 8 years now. I've been inside of the eye on numerous occasions. There are several other caves that I've also been in. But it's really only been for the last year that I've been looking at this mountain with different eyes and was exposed to some new ideas that caused me to look at it differently, and I began gathering evidence. I've taken lots of photographs and videos. I've been in places that I probably shouldn't have been and even injured myself a couple of times. About a year ago, I got exposed to the idea of Titans. It wasn't the first time. As a kid, I was exposed to the mythology, the Greek mythologies, and watched this movie, The Clash of the Titans, saw the Kraken get turned to stone by the Medusa's head. And I ran across a couple of videos by Mud Fossils University talking about the idea that fossilization could happen much, much faster than we realized. Also looking at the idea that there was probably a worldwide flood that involved a great deal of mud that caused lots of creatures to be encased and then eventually fossilized. Another video by Jay Dreamers did this Petrified Titans video, which was very fascinating, and he made a pretty interesting case, I felt, for the possibility that Titans actually existed. And that was a real surprise to me because I grew up near a mountain in California called Chief's Peak, and it looks a lot like an Indian lying on its back, and I was always fascinated by the resemblance, but it never really occurred to me that, well, maybe it was. So I started seeing photographs like this and others. And it definitely sparked my imagination. This is Paul Bunyan with his buddy Blue, I believe, Big Ox. The myth goes that the Grand Canyon was formed by him dragging his axe behind him. He used to go around North America cutting down gigantic trees with his axe. So maybe there's some truth to that tale. So, one of the first things a skeptic will think when they look at these kinds of pictures is that people are suffering from something known as pareidolia, which is when you see things that aren't really there. You look up at a cloud and you see a dragon or a face or something, and obviously that's not really in the cloud. And so it's easy to make the same mistake when you're looking at these kinds of photographs. But in Jay Dreamer's video, I started thinking a little differently when I photographs like this, because I've been living near this mountain that is known as the Elephant for the last 8 years, and when I saw these images I thought, maybe it's not just a mountain that looks like an elephant. Maybe there's actually more to it than that. So some of these might just be rocks that take that shape, that form, but you never know. Some of them might actually be fossilized elephants. And if that's the case, then everything we know about geology is based on erroneous thinking, and we need to start to revisit these different ologies. And in the last year and a half since I first got exposed to this idea, a lot of other interesting topics have come along. The idea that maybe our entire historical timeline has been manipulated and large segments of time have been injected. A lot of people are studying the works of Anatoly Fomenko, who makes those suppositions.
So I spent I spent the next year really going deep into that. I made a video series called Unveiling a Titan. First video is just an overview. Second video is all about the eye itself and all of the anatomical features that are present in the eye socket. Later on, I was there with friends, and one of them pointed out a structure that I hadn't noticed before. I had already hypothesized that there's this section of the cave that kind of juts up, and it looks almost like a wave that's about to crash. And I thought, wow, that's exactly the right place for an eyeball. And it looks like the remains of an eyeball. And I was there with my friends, and one of them noticed that the whole back side of that structure was covered in a 10-inch thick layer of quartz crystal. So it was this big stony structure jutting upward, and the whole back side was covered with crystal. And I already had a theory at that point that fat petrifies to quartz in varying ways. So fat, blood plasma, which is primarily fatty chain acids, and fascia, ligament, tendon, disc, all of these things in my crazy world, when they petrify to quartz. And so that just was more confirmation. And just in the eye socket alone, there's almost 20 anatomical correlations, which is a huge, huge number if you're thinking about it from a probability perspective. You had a question?
Oh, yeah. Interesting that you say that these crystals, because during our research that we found a lot of these crystals coming from these also Tartarian, I call it Tartarian red brick buildings, but maybe they're coming from different sources of crystal because of this petrified event, this cataclysmic event, this maybe ancient silica world. I mean, there's a couple of different things, but it's interesting that you say that, and it does make sense of what you're saying. Interesting that I also, during my research, doing this, is that I found that these little crystals were coming out of these buildings. But to hear you say that they're coming from the different body parts, which is I already know that the Titans and the Titan animals is the truth. I mean, there's overwhelming evidence, just like this flat plane realm we live on, that there were these Titan animals and these Titan beings that existed.
And we're also talking, Rich, also about if all these people were entombed, if the event happened so quickly and they were entombed, there would be a lot of
petrification.
Absolutely. That's actually a good point. And that's what this is all about. This is all about connecting the dots, kind of figuring out, hey, from different people's perspective on this topic. Because it's it is challenging, and there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle. I have a friend called Wise Up, and he has a different perspective on a lot of these things. He's a very intelligent guy, but he has a different perspective. Mike has a different perspective, and I think it's very important.
I have a lot of respect for Wise Up's work, and I think that he's spot on when it comes to the combination of volcanic ash combining with salt water to cause petrification as well, especially as it infiltrates wood. So a lot of the stony structures that we see around the world that are these megalithic sites that they've excavated, that they're barrows that around England, they're areas that look like boats, right, with the ribs of the boats, but everything's made of stone. And I think his conclusions about that are spot on, that they were wood originally, but the ash and the salt water infiltrated those, and so that's
absolutely. And if you guys don't know who Wise Up is, I mean, he's got amazing. I've been looking at him for years. He's amazing work, amazing about what these he knew about the ancients were very advanced, and where we just re-engineered everything what they did from the ancients, from concrete and all kinds of steel and this technology. I think that is a very good channel. He's on YouTube, Wise Up. Shout out to Wise Up too as well. But yeah, you're right, man. But let me ask you a question, man.
Wait, I just want to say one thing. Going back to the crystals, it's important to understand that crystals constantly grow, and they can grow very quickly. I showed a video on my channel at one point where they're basically just they're starting with a tiny crystal and they're putting it in solutions and hanging it. And within the space of 40 or 50 days, you can get a crystal that's that big.
No shit.
No shit. So a lot of what you see could have been formed after whatever the event was.
Right.
And I think also when it comes to the quartz, you were showing me some pictures before we started recording. I think a lot of what you're seeing there is the remains of tree, actually, and quartz is found riddled throughout the trees. My belief, my theory is that the sap of the trees is petrifying to quartz. That's also a hotly contested topic by certain people in the truth community, but there's plenty of evidence for that. So
sort of
there's a lot of different ways that the quartz could come about, and the building, based on what you showed me before we started, I have a hard time imagining that that's actually building. My first thought is tree, because if you take something like a cedar, and you think of it, we're talking about mega trees, right? The like Avatar trees that are miles wide at the base that stretched up into the heavens, and when they were taken out by the cataclysm or cataclysms, a lot of, if you look at how cedar breaks down, you get the banding. So a lot of what the meltology people are pointing at and saying, this is a building, you can see the layer to the brick, and there's the mortar between, and then there's the red, and then there's the white, and a lot of that is actually just cedar grain. And then when it breaks down to red earth and sand, and a lot of our, one of the problems I have with meltology as a whole is the name. I think that there's a lot of evidence that certain mountains around the realm are building. You can see brick in the rubble.
Right.
But the problem with the name Meltology is there's no melt. So you can see breakdown and rubble and even flow, but if you think about what happens when you take sand and you melt it,
it turns into glass.
Right. That's called vitrification, right?
Well, yeah, that's what
there are some pictures floating around now. Initially, when the theory came out and those 6-hour videos were going around, everyone's like, everything's a melted building, the whole realm, there was no evidence whatsoever of melt in any of those pictures. Now they found sites where there's melt. You can see what was probably like a giant kiln or something where the insides, it's just literally dripping down, and that is glassy and it's melted. So you've got examples of melt there, but the vast majority of what people are calling melted buildings exhibit zero signs of melt. And as soon as you start to question them on that, they're like, you need to watch more videos. You need to see, you need to watch this 6-hour video. It's like, show me your best evidence. And, that there are a lot of people who think that they found conclusive evidence that are making grandiose claims. Great claims require great evidence. And
I totally agree with that.
And I wasn't seeing it. And then also the guy who came up with the theory in the first place is a total jerk. And actually, he's worse than a jerk. He's an asshole. So, and he came after my channel and went off on 2 different rants at 2 different times with his conniption fit chicken scratch all over the place, and debunked my research without addressing a single point in my research. All he did was got on Google Earth and started making a bunch of claims about what he was seeing and drawing in a frantic way. And Jerry Camp is an asshole.
Yeah, well, yeah, I agree that, because we talked about this a long time ago. This is nothing new. How he did that was wrong, and it wasn't scientific, and he didn't give you any credit for what you were actually saying, and that's why
he didn't even bother to review the evidence. He just assumed that there was no evidence, and then went on live to try and prove that there was no evidence with his opinions, and his opinions don't matter.
And that's the problem. And he's not the only one in the community. You got these people who just don't want to give.
Well, there's a lot of that in the Meltology crowd, and there are people who jumped ship because of it that were originally on board with the idea.
I think it's sad that it's like that, because you have to remain open mind, and then you can't just say, "Oh, this is what it is," without failing. Because what I've noticed, Mike, is that that during this evolution of knowledge and understanding what the hell's going on here, is that excuse me, that I have to sometime say, "Oh, I thought it was this way." And I have to say, no, well, maybe I have to change my viewpoints, all right? Because I know how to put my pride to the side. I know how to say, oh, wow, I didn't, oh, yes, that looks, that I can't change this because I'm stuck on that. I don't like people like that. And I don't think that people should be that way. I think you should be able to have an intelligent conversation with intelligent people talking about.
And it's coming from someone who's a little new to all this. It's a lot of information, and it's coming at you from all different directions, and people you respect and people you think, and then you hear something different. But it's so much information.
Varying degrees of quality. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think
I've said in many of my presentations and in my live streams, I think that when we're talking about all these different subjects, whether it's Tartaria or mud floods or World's Fairs or Meltology, that there's truth to all of it. And the problem is people get hung up on their pet theory, and they try and apply their theory to everything, and then they start excluding all the other stuff, and then they get defensive because they're making outrageous claims and people are challenging them on it. And so for me, it's like, is the answer A, B, C, or D? It's like it's usually E, all of the above in many cases. And that's what I try and bring to the table. And it would be nice if people were a little less confrontational and more open-minded, and actually came with evidence before they started making grandiose claims.
Or just come with even an intelligent conversation. You don't have to be like, oh no, because there's some people, I'm not going to name no names because that's not what we're here for. But there's people.
I won't name names either anymore.
I remember when I was researching mud floods in Tartaria, 5 years ago. And people were like, oh no, you're crazy and there's no way. I mean, I used to have arguments with
There's no evidence of a worldwide flood. Like every civilization in the world has that in its historical, mythological, religious record.
Right.
And probably multiple.
Yeah, and it's old world that I was trying to, show people. And I remember, like, oh, even you had so-called truthers that were like, oh, no. And now everybody's going, now that the cat's out the bag, now everybody's jumping on board. Now everybody understands to see what's going on about this old advanced civilization before us. So I totally agree. There's some things that we differ on certain things, but that's okay though. I don't want to hang around people that agree with me 24/7, 365, because how can you learn? How can you grow? I like to be challenged, just like I like to challenge other people's thought. Like I learn a lot from you and your research, and I will continue. Like I said, I value your research, I value your thoughts, I value your opinions, and I value your friendship. So this is important. I think we all had that kind of approach with these things, and it's to respect, and and just like you said, to kind of, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
Right. And the evidence, and just the overwhelming amount of evidence that he provides with, especially the trees, with the Titans, with the mountains, how they look.
Right.
It's just overwhelming and incredible to get to. When you start seeing it, it's hard not to see it. It's hard to unsee when you pointed it out.
Exactly. And Tim, I think it's also important to say is that, hey, you have these people with different opinions and different research, but if we can get everybody sitting at a table and uncover, rather than fighting over this nonsense, because that's what it is nonsense, that we can have better advancements and better understanding of what's going
together,
on. About this knowledge and about this just this information. But there are a lot of truthers that are hitting out of the park. There are a lot of people that are evolving with this knowledge and with this thing. I have a question for you. Antarctica, right? Because this is what this show is basically about, and the name of this show is called Antarctica. Is it ice or crystal? And what are your thoughts about Antarctica? About that 200-foot so-called ice wall? Maybe it's not ice, and maybe it's actually crystal, or a little bit of both. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, you haven't shown me anything as far as the crystal theory, that is convincing to me. As far as what's down there, there's old maps that are without the ice and that sort of thing, and we have this helicopter footage of and photographs of boats that are up next to it, and they're having cranes to lift up so they can just get onto the plateau. Yeah. So is that really an ice ring that's going around our realm, or is that just a small section of somewhere that has ice like that they're giving us, and that's all part? You've got the map on your wall back behind you.
Yes.
I don't know if there's any truth to that map or not. It seems to work for a lot of different things when it comes to navigation, and it answers a lot of questions, but I don't think it answers all of them. And then you get into the map wars within the community as well. And oh no, if you're pushing the AE map, you're controlled op and all this kind of stuff. So I don't know, unless you go down there yourself, how are you really going to know?
We know, hey, is the Earth flat? We know that such and such, so we know it's flat. And the problem is we don't have of what's just going on. And I think
you come down and check out for yourself, right?
I think
it definitely measures flat. We see too far, whether it's microwave or GPS
laser,
or
sonar,
or laser, or periscopes, rail guns. It just goes on and on and on. But for me, the long distance footage is what's most convincing. Stuff like from Jay Tolan, where he's up in the planes with his massive infrared and the large lenses, and he's seeing 700 more miles away, and that's a globe killer. So I don't really care ultimately what the shape is. I kind of identify as a toroid earther. I think we might be on the accretion disk of a toroid. And that ultimately we're in a flat place, but are we on the inside of something? Or I don't know. There's infinite plane. There are all these theories, and until I see something that's absolutely conclusive, and how could it be unless you can get outside of it? And that doesn't seem to be possible either.
I think that's a good answer. Sometimes you have to say is I don't know. And I think that the reason why that the AE map, the azimuthal equidistant projection map, that was made in 1892 by a cartographer named Alexander Gleason is good, because that's not only that the map, that it's an official USG map that the Navy actually uses today, but I think it's also it's a standard map to kind of explain that we do live in a container, and that it kind of explains from north to south. But I also think there was a lot of hiding done when revealing that map, even back in 1892.
It's a great placeholder. You know, it's like the whole thing with Tartaria, where everyone starts going, well, Tartaria, it was this worldwide civilization, and and there's all this evidence, and then all the critics are like, no, it wasn't worldwide. And the point was that what we were looking at was pyramids everywhere, star forts everywhere, Tartarian architecture, or Greco-Roman, whatever you want to call it, is everywhere.
Domes
places
everywhere.
that it shouldn't be, at times that it shouldn't be. So Tartaria was a great placeholder name for revisionistic history, alternative research into these topics as a whole. And so the people that threw it under the bus, I think that they were missing the point, which is that it was a placeholder term. We weren't, a lot of the researchers weren't trying to make claims that it was everywhere. Well, some were, but people get into the subject, they don't know a whole lot about things, and they think they know a lot about it, and sudden, it's the Dunning-Kruger effect for truthing.
But to get back to the map real quick, and talking about the accuracy, I think off the coast of Japan, they just found, was it 7,000 islands? So how accurate are the maps anyway? 7,000, not just a couple, not a few, but I mean, that many found, found 7,000 islands.
Shout out.
This is in the mainstream narrative. I haven't heard this.
Shout out to David Weiss pointing that out. They found 7,000 action islands. And what I think what's going on is, I think that these islands are basically tips of these buildings that are existed, and the ground floor is really the sea floor. The ground level is actually sea level. That's why we have all these underworld cities. But it's an interesting point that you made, and that what Wise Up made, is that the water levels was way much higher than what they were. And eventually they did recede it, but not to the point where to where they are now, and maybe that they were. There's a lot of truth to that. Now, when, I don't know. I can tell you that through all the ancient maps, that maybe this place was flooded several times. Maybe there were different times of resets, and these resets are all intertwining together, and we're just seeing the remains of them. And because
the entire realm has been terraformed, there's no doubt about that. There's all kinds of artificial coastline and artificial islands, but also there's a lot of old maps that suggest that, like pyramids, for example, that possibly built on top of tree stumps. So to say that the islands were all buildings, to me that's a reach. But maybe the top of what's poking up was once a building, and it was on top of something else. But it's
there's also the concept, like Vibes of Cosmos is shown, and also that in Prague, that clock in Prague, where it shows what if we're here and it keeps moving, everything keeps moving around, comes back, and then it kind of uncover what was there before, and it, as the global warming or whatever, as it's moving away, all the land that was there could be covered in ice. It could move, it could warm up again when the sun moves around again. That 6,000 year. Yeah, thank you. But I mean, other concepts.
I think it's fun to ponder. That this ties into the reverse image of the moon being a reflection, and that we're in just like one of the craters of the moon, or not of the moon, but that the moon is actually showing us the greater realm, and that our little AE map is actually just a small portion of that. It's very interesting when you look at the overlays. It seems compelling, but is it true? I don't know. Is it a hollow Earth? Is it a concave? There's a lot of possibilities. I thought the Norb theory approach, Martin Kenny's cosmic egg that he was showing 6-7 years ago. That's very interesting. The outer rings. We've got these old Tibetan maps that are showing the outer rings with all the extra continents, extraterrestrial, so
space.
All of that is up for grabs for me. I'm not. I think the mistake that people are making is they're getting attached to one over the other, and then there's infighting about it instead of people just keeping an open mind and realizing unless I can get outside of it and see it, I don't know for sure.
A lot of that's by design too. You got these shills that come into the community to try to break things up, to try to cause division, and just to try to keep people stuck and not really knowing the truth, just to kind of do some shake up. And there's literally people who are paid to do that. So we know that's a fact. To come into the community, seen it several times, and to kind of make a disruption with a lot of this stuff. So you got a little bit of that going on too. If not
controlled
a lot.
is a very
Add confusion, right? Yeah. The deception. Yep.
Controlled opposition, and then exactly just to kind of make the whole thing look retarded and stupid. But we know we're smarter than that. We have to be smarter than that and actually look past that. So, but I would like to, me and Tam would like to have you on our next show to connect some dots with us about what your research is. I know we already had you on before previous years on connecting the dots, and I'm going to send the link to Tam so she can watch our original show on connecting the dots, which is amazing. And you definitely will like it, but like to come in and kind of like expand on some of your research with your rocks, which I love. I'm a big fan of, because knowing that we know that all of these beings, and like I said, going to what we were talking about before, these titans were huge, and they're the ones that terraformed this earth in the beginning. And why do you think we have to mine? We get all this iron, we get all of this stuff, this pink Himalayan stuff from these titan animals and these titan beings. So it definitely makes sense that a lot of that we're seeing is a mixture of everything. But we'd definitely like to have you back on over with that with you, and come back and help us connect some dots on your finding with these with your video Unveiling the Titan, and also your extensive research on these rocks, and actually kind of explain and connect some dots. I think that would be an excellent move.
Yeah, I've gone deep into the catastrophism idea and how that manifests as petrification, and what are the causes of that, and are there potentially a variety of different causes? And I believe there are, whether it's volcanic, like we talked about with Wise Up, or electrical plasma. And in fact, if you think about the Ring of Fire, all of the volcanoes, we only have certain ones that are active at any given time. Imagine if they were all active at the same time, and the amount of ash that they would have spewed up into the atmosphere. And they've just in the last year or two, you've got some of the most amazing footage of the largest electrical storms they've ever seen. And it's all volcanic. So as soon as you got the volcanic ash up there, it's the medium through which all of this lightning can take place. So it's
Richard,
lightning storms the likes of which you've never seen.
Interesting that you say that. And since you said that, let's pause right there. And I'm going to share my screen and actually play what these French scientists were talking about, exactly what you just said. So let me just share my screen right now and actually show exactly what you was just talking about. It's funny that he said that, right, Tam?
That was perfect timing. Absolutely.
Perfect timing. Okay, so these French scientists are trying to figure out what is this destruction in these buildings and what happened before in the past. And she basically said to say word for word the same thing what you just said. So let's have a look at this.
Je pense que quand on fait une découverte de ce type-là, on ne sait pas que ça va changer le cours de votre vie, mais on ne peut pas lâcher prise. C'est un petit peu, je ferai la comparaison, c'est un peu comme si un un détective est sur les traces d'un tueur en série, d'un serial killer, il va pas lâcher prise.
In Perpignan, France, at the French National Centre for Scientific Research, Corti and a team of physicists analyzed the destruction pattern. Because the debris impacted the sites from above, they looked to the sky for natural phenomena. But what could deliver such a rapid blast of high-intensity heat? Corti gets a clue. An accident report from emergency services who have been investigating the death of someone struck by lightning. Incredibly, at the accident scene, the emergency workers uncovered a familiar material. The same plastic polymers Corti found across the Harbor Plains.
Et là, je dis, oulala, mais ça, c'est pas de la contamination, ça va pas du tout, parce qu'il a absolument pas les caractéristiques d'un plastique industriel.
Industrial plastic is formed by combining and processing the byproducts of crude oil. It has a unique molecular structure. But the plastic polymers recorded at the accident scene are different.
Nous avons pu procéder en fait à une identification sur les effets de la victime, des traces de foudre, et constater qu'effectivement, il y avait eu transformation de la peau, transformation des effets en polymère. Nous avions affaire à des phénomènes plasma. Donc, les phénomènes de foudre déclenchent des plasmas électriques qui transforment en fait les aérosols en nanoparticules. Et pourquoi ces nanoparticules sont si importantes? Et c'est ces mêmes oxydes de titane en nanofeuillets que j'avais identifiés dans la matrice polymère des plastiques de tellélane. Je pourrais vous faire une liste de tous les sites.
The plastic polymers found on the body of the person struck by lightning were the same as the ones Corti found in the Acadian archaeological excavations. Her analysis has shown that the plastic she uncovered wasn't pollution after all, but a naturally occurring plastic polymer created by lightning. Corti has a hunch that lightning was responsible for the destruction of the Acadian sites across the Harbor Plains. But how could such a large lightning storm actually form? After decades of analysis, Corti has developed a theory that she believes explains it: a dust bomb. It requires a massive injection of dust high into the atmosphere, likely from a volcanic eruption. As this large amount of dust moves between the troposphere and the stratosphere, it creates friction, and the air becomes charged with static electricity. The electric field becomes so great that it rips atoms apart and creates plasma channels. When these channels connect, they allow the electricity to flow, and lightning is formed. As this huge amount of dust falls to Earth, it generates an incredibly powerful but localized lightning storm. When it touches down, the energy release is massive.
Donc, quand on a affaire à des phénomènes de foudre, on est à de l'hypervitesse et de l'hypervélocité. On est à plusieurs Mach, on est à Mach 10, donc on est à des vitesses hypersoniques. Il y en a qui ont comparé ces manifestations aux effets des bombes atomiques. On est sur une déflagration hyper ponctuelle. La puissance de l'énergie est concentrée dans ce canal de foudre et avec une concentration extrêmement importante. Tellermar qui a été totalement déstabilisé, qui est tombé intact. Et en fait, ça se fait en quelques microsecondes. Donc, ça a dû être quelque chose de remarquable.
The heightened dust needed for the phenomenon to occur could explain the thick dust layer found at Tell-les-Lans. Corti's analysis shows it was deposited over only a number of days. It would also explain the soot layer found across the region, intense heat caused by lightning. But it's proved impossible for Corti to date the destruction layers across each site, for certain, to the Akkadian period. And without a date range connecting the sites, there's no way of linking Corti's theory to the collapse of the Akkadian Empire. but it was.
I want to go back to that and kind of like stop it right there. And I wanted to kind of just kind of show that on that what you're saying. Could be a lot of truth into what you're saying and that possibility. So what are your thoughts on that video?
It's very interesting. Obviously, it's all put in the context of mainstream physics. So
sometimes
when she's talking about the atoms separating and the plasma between them, I have no idea if there's any truth to that or not.
Right.
But when it comes to the volcanic ash and large amounts of it layering down, absolutely. I think Wise Up has shown lots and lots of evidence of that occurring in many parts of the world. Also, if you take Mount St. Helens as an example, there are mainstream geologists that have examined the slurry flows that came after the volcanic eruption there. And in the space of 3 to 6 hours, all like many meters of volcanic flow ash were laid down with micro layering. So that kind of debunks the mainstream narrative when it comes to sedimentary layering and how long it takes for these layers to form, because that's literally happening in hours, just like what she was describing in the video. So that's one aspect. And then when it comes, like a lot of my channel, I've focused on looking into these ideas surrounding the possibility of instant petrification, because we have petrification in the mainstream narrative, which takes hundreds of millions of years, and it's this slow infiltration of the minerals and things that are surrounding wood or different creatures or whatever, and they're working their way in slowly over these mind-boggling amounts of time. But whether you're talking about volcanic ash, high mineral content waters will also create petrification in a short amount of time. I've mentioned zillions of times Mother Shipton's cave in the UK. People go and they hang things from ropes, and the water drips down the rope, and then it drips around the object, and then it encases the object in mineral, and then eventually that works its way in. There's a lake called Lake Natron. I can't remember where it is. I should know that, but it's got very highly caustic, acidic waters with very large mineral content. Creatures fall in and they don't get out because they die, and then they petrify. So that can happen with mineral content waters. It can happen with volcanic ash.
Sort of like Utah, right? Is that what you're saying? Sort of like the Salt Lake Lydian?
Yeah, like really high content mineral waters will encase things and then eventually petrify them. And then you've got this idea of petrification through electricity or plasma. And there's a channel called Thunderbolts Project that they look a lot into an electric universe model. And there's a video by one of their members named Mungo Jup called Instant Fossilization. And he talked about different creatures that are found petrified in the process of eating another creature. These concretions that have like crabs, and the crabs are in a position that tells you that they were
something
alive.
instantly.
It was a very quick thing. And then he talks about an example in Canada where high tension wires went down and they laid across a row of tree stumps that they cut down trees by the side of the road, and the wires were laying with the current flowing through them. They didn't short out, and so the current was going for hours. And when they examined the stumps later, the stumps had turned to stone, and not just the stump, but the entire root structure of the tree underneath the ground had turned to stone. And this is with high tension wires in a matter of hours. There's a video I've shown. It's on my channel. It's like a short little 3-minute video. I think it's called Instant Petrification. And there's a guy with a big channel that does all kinds of different science experiments. And one of the experiments that he did was creating rubies in a microwave. And what he did is he's got two different powders that are chemical compounds. I can't remember the names of them. And he mixes these powders together, and then he puts them in a crucible, which in this case was basically like a thick votive candle, like glass that's, half an inch thick. And he mixes the powders in there. I think he put in a little bit of steel wool also, so that the current could go through the steel wool and permeate the powder. But in a microwave, and a microwave has what's known as a magnetron, so they're pumping out a lot of power. And basically he's got this votive with the powders, and then he's got a ceramic lid on top that can vibrate, so that the plasma from the microwave can work its way in and interact with these materials. And in the space of 10 seconds, he's creating rubies. In 10 seconds. Now, ruby, if you think of the hardness scale, diamond being the hardest, they tell us, like I learned in school, it was 1 million pounds of pressure for 1 million years creates a diamond.
Yeah.
And why
they're big numbers. They're big
in a short amount of time, right?
So
that's the hardest on the Mohs scale, and ruby is the second hardest. So this guy in the space of 10 seconds converts a couple of powders into a stone that's the second hardest stone that we know of. So to me, that's 100% evidence that rapid petrification through plasma is just a fact. It's not a theory. And then the question is, how big were the plasma storms? And if we're inside of a dome, and you think of one of those Tesla balls, and if a God-sized storm hit, what could that petrify? Probably a whole heck of a lot in a very short amount of time. So there's lots and lots of examples of these different ways in which things can petrify. Artificial petrification, like the rubies and other things, is it's just a fact. And there were guys in the 1800s that knew how to convert flesh of different types into stone, and we don't know how they did that because their secrets died with them. But my guess is that they were probably using what's known as water glass, which is like a silicate of some sort.
And I was just going to say that our previous past, where there was more silica, around, and and that's why these things became, petrified. It was because maybe a lot of things was much more and made of the silica.
A lot of people talk about the silica era, especially when referring to the trees, because we have Devil's Tower, we have all these basalt columns and everything. That's also, it's a hotly contested idea, but there's a lot of people that are like, well, those kinds of forms couldn't support life as we know it. So it would have had to have been a completely different kind of biology. I think it's far more likely that there was a transmutation of elements that took place. So instead of giant silica trees growing, I think what's more likely is when the plasma struck them, if that's what it was, that the elements that were in the normal trees, like, we think of the sequoias, but on a much larger scale, that those materials within the trees, the heartwood and the bark and all of the sap of different types, there's 2 different kinds of sap in each of the trees, that all of that is converted into other materials. And I think those are the materials that make up a lot of our periodic table of elements, if not the entire table.
Just getting into alchemy, like Crow 777, how much he covers a lot of that.
I'm not up to date on his stuff, so I don't know what he's covering. But if you think about, I think that we have electrical plasma transmutation of element, but we also have biological transmutation. And the example I always come back to is the simplest one of all, which is the egg. If you look at a chicken's diet in the course of its daily life, and it's eating whatever's on the ground, the calcium that's in the shell of the egg far outweighs the calcium that the chicken is consuming. So where's the calcium coming from? Clearly, the chicken is eating things, like mica and different substances, and it's taking those and it's biologically transmuting them into calcium.
Right.
So that is just a fact. Right? The mainstream doesn't talk about it because it kind of debunks, I think, a lot of the mainstream model when it comes to elements and how they form. And we're told they're forming in the heart of stars, millions, billions of years of pressure and atomic fusion and all these things, and then they supernova out and they seed the galaxies with all of these particles that are nebulas, and then those come together. Magically, gas it reverses its normal behavior of dispersing evenly into whatever space that it occupies, and all of a sudden now it's attracted to itself, and then it creates these stars and these planets and all this stuff.
I got a question for you. Speaking of stars, let me ask you a question. What if that the stars we see are just breathing holes?
Yeah, we're inside of a
hamster box. We are in some type of terrarium, right?
I mean, we see light, and we see actually with the P900 and P1000s, you guys well know this, that you see all kinds of patterns that the mainstream wants us to believe are just artifacts of the cameras, but they're being picked up by lots of different kinds of camera.
Liquidy
and
frequency.
Well, the liquid is you can see that just with powerful optics. So that's your waters above possibly. But then you've got like concentric circles, and you got geometric patterns and all these things that should not be coming if that was the light of stars that are 100 millions of light years away. So I think what are stars? I think they're cymatic emanations of the Godhead that exists within the firmament. That's my best guess. But could be breathing holes.
I was just making a joke.
It's a funny idea. I've had that thought before. Like,
little pinholes, lights coming through. Yeah.
But
this will confuse them.
We're coming up to the end, man. But I want to say, thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedule and coming on and onto the show, connecting the dots and connecting some dots with us. I can't wait to have you back on our next show to explain in more detail what's going on, and we could, about your research and about these unveiling this Titan. Also, too, is please let everyone know Stellium 7, where they can find you, where to get your stuff at, and how to reach out to you.
All I have is just the YouTube channel, and it's right there, Stellium 7. I started mentioning the Unveiling a Titan series before, which is it's 7 parts, and the first one is just an overview. You could probably skip that one because your audience, I'm sure, are used to a lot of these subjects. It was the first video I ever made. It's definitely not my best video, and there's a whole lot I would change about that. But the second video is about the eye. The third is about the ear. The fourth, I go in great detail into the histology, which is the tissues of the mountain. And I'm looking at all of the different stony, rocky structures are on and around the mountain, and looking and asking the question, does this correlate to what I would expect to find with bone, right? If this were actually petrified bone, right, is there any truth to that? And so that's what the fourth video is about. The fifth video, I go back up to the eye again, make a whole bunch of new discoveries. And the sixth video is kind of a synthesis, bringing it all together, and also talking about the heart stones. And the seventh video I did live. It was a Q&A that I did up at the eye. So that's also worth watching. It's not called Unveiling a Titan Part 7. It's just live. It's live from the Eye of Moltko. It's under the live tab. So most people who get through those are believers by the time they're done. There's over 50 anatomical correlations, which is a massive number if you think about probability.
I watched them all. You're not wasting your time. It's very good research. I like the way you put it together. And
the videos are like 30 minutes each. Most of them, I think one might be closer to an hour.
I mean, good. If you haven't read, you haven't looked at his stuff, look at his stuff. But again, we can go over more of this next time. I want to say thank you for taking the time again for coming out on and
Thank you very much. Yeah.
and being a part of the Edge of Your Sheet.
My pleasure. Thank you for getting me out of my hibernation. I haven't done anything on my channel for 2.5 months. So I was preparing for my presentations, and I was busy with work, and been busy with work since I got back. So I've been planning a live stream in the next few days just to do a recap and show some fun pictures and video clips of my experiences down in Mexico.
Can't wait to see it. Yeah.
And yeah, it was a real star-studded cast down there. I really had a lot of fun hanging out with all those people. And David Weiss was there. David Weiss presented just before me. I specifically I found out I was going to be on the same day as him, and I specifically requested to follow him, which was kind of a dumb idea, you know, because he gave an amazing presentation.
Yeah.
He's not used to doing live. I don't think he'd ever done a live presentation before. I think he said. I mean, he's done over 1,000 online, but to have a live audience. But I just figured it's the perfect, you know, the Titan. I didn't even touch on my own research with the Titan and with the Heartstones and all of that. I was just on the trees with 45 minutes. There's no way to cover all of that stuff.
All of that stuff.
Material.
Yeah. So
we'll have you come back, and then we can go over more of this in detail and about your research. And I'd like to put it out there. We're on a tight schedule, so I want to make sure that we get that in there, and can't wait to see you back. You know, on that.
And it stayed very polite, right, Rich? It stayed very polite.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
I always said, what did you say, Tam?
No.
It's always with Stellian.
Yeah, you touched a sore spot. Yeah,